Hello and welcome to the Rabblecast. My name is Eric Hernandez, and you are listening to episode number 612. I'm having trouble recalling what we really actually talked about on this episode. And I say that not because not that I can't remember, it's just that there's a lot of stuff that we covered. We did a follow up on the Titan Submersible, and we even have a little correspondence from our former host, Jimmy, who I reached out to last week after Doug had mentioned his name on the show. Figured get his 2 cents on what happened. We were hoping for a little bit more scientific follow up, but we got a little bit something different. I'll let you listen to the show and find out what that is. From there, we ping ponged around a little bit as far as different subjects. We cover some, funny enough, politics, movies, and a little bit of wrestling here and there. As I came up with an idea and I wanted to workshop it with Doug a little bit. A whole bunch of stuff. It's a long episode. I'm not going to keep you guys much longer. I just want to get into it at this point. So, we are brought to you by InsidePulse.com. You can find us under the podcast section. You can also follow the show over where it's always posted at Rabblecast.libsyn.com. Check us out on YouTube. Check us out on Twitter at Rabblecast. Check out the Rabblecast Facebook fan page on Facebook. Email us, rabblecast@gmail.com. And as always, email us, comment, subscribe, review, whatever the case is. Let me know that you're out there listening. I love hearing from you guys. The emails that I have gotten have been supportive and very nice. It's great to hear that people are enjoying the show, and it's great to hear that people are enjoying having Doug back on the show as well. Trust me, it's easier for me to do the show with somebody else, and we'll see what we can do as far as getting other people or other guests down the line. So with that said, it's a long one. Have fun. Enjoy the show. All right, sir. How are you?
I'm keeping it together as best as possible. How are you?
Not too bad. At the beginning of my vacation from work. We have a mandatory shutdown for the week of July 4th, so I'm going to enjoy a few days of relaxation, hopefully.
That's pretty sweet.
So I can't complain on that end. It was a little bit hectic recently, so it's nice to have a reprieve coming up. It
Hmm.
also gives me some time to sit down and, edit this and take care of other things around the house, so we'll see what happens.
So you're off starting when?
Tonight, well, I should say tomorrow. Today was our last day.
Okay, so you're off tomorrow. And when do you go back to work?
Not this Monday, but the following Monday. So what is that, the 10th?
Yes,
So,
because the Saturday's the first, second, third, Monday's the third, a week after that is the 10th. Okay, so you're actually shut down for, not counting the holiday, that's 5 working days.
mm-hmm.
Nice. All right, that's pretty good.
It's going to be a nice little relaxation after everything we've been going through recently. Production's been kind of, well, I had mentioned before that production was kind of slow, so out of nowhere, like we got a job in, we're trying to figure it out. It's the first time we've been doing this type of job, and we're just going a little stir crazy trying to get all the ins and outs. So, um,
Ah,
we'll get there eventually. It just got to figure things out. The only problem is that I can't really be hands on, only because we don't have a quality guy right now.
yeah.
So it has fallen on to me to be quality, and because I'm quality, I can't do the production part of it because you can't QA your own work.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
So one of the engineers had mentioned it. He goes, "Yeah, you should probably have him do it because he has pretty much experience in all three sectors as far as quality, production, and well, I should say some I guess engineering in a sense, but in this instance." It makes more sense for me to hang back and just do quality. So I'm kind of like really quality production and production supervisor, which is kind of weird. So, and if you were to ask my boss, she would deny it because otherwise she'd have to pay me extra. So,
Well, that's the problem with small companies sometimes. You're going to wear a lot of hats, but there's a
exactly.
lot of hats to go around and not a lot of cash to go around.
Well, that's a whole other subject. I'll tell you about that one offline. But we last week, or I should say last episode, we were talking about the Titan submersible from Ocean Gate.
Yes.
And part of that discussion, you had stopped because we were trying to figure out like depths and what could cause whatever implosion happened to the submersible itself. To which they've started to recover different parts of the craft, but that's a whole other scenario right now. During the discussion last time, you had said, "I really wish Jimmy was here because he could like fill us in on a bunch of this other information." And I think we were trying to do some of the math, and for us, it was just like number crunching. Not right now. So
Yeah.
I reached out to Jimmy. I said, "Hey,
good thinking here, fellas."
I said, "Hey, Jimmy, what are your thoughts on the Titan submersible?" And he says,
Okay.
"So if you wouldn't indulge me for a second."
Read away, man. Read away.
Laugh out loud, so many thoughts. Like the obvious thought is, I'm mad because 5 people lost their lives, but then the CEO and I think the pilot had a degree in aerospace engineering and should have fucking known better. Both regarding the design of the submarine, or excuse me, submersible, not great, and the choice of materials. I've never heard of carbon fiber used in a pressure vessel before. Plus, this guy was famous for saying that safety regulations beyond a certain point were a waste of money, and I've known executives who wanted to cut safety measures to increase profits, and it's always pissed me off to no end, because I worked with the operators on the line. And so while I can't say that the guy had it coming, I can say that he should have seen it coming, but his stupid ego got in the way. And then there are my feelings about Titanic enthusiasts, which basically boil down to, why the fuck are you so obsessed with a series of bad decisions? Why do you romanticize this tragedy so much? I don't get them, and they honestly upset me to a certain degree because they usually aren't interested in the science behind the disaster, which, for me, Jimmy, is the only reason anyone should still be studying the wreck. Finally, the eat the rich guy in me is never upset when rich people shell out a lot of money to be put into unnecessarily dangerous situations and then get taken out. I'm also generally annoyed that so much money and effort and press was spent on the rescue effort, but comparatively, none was on the rescue of the 700 Pakistani migrants who were capsized off the coast of Greece, which you had brought up last time.
Yep.
Although I do acknowledge that a super yacht ended up being the first responder to the scene and rescued most of the survivors. I did not know about that one.
Yeah, me neither.
I should note that Mike Reese, longtime Simpsons showrunner and also was a showrunner on The Critic, apparently went down to the Titanic wreck on Ocean Gate vessel like 4 times. I'm glad the thing didn't collapse while he was on board. And the last thought that I have is my favorite dark joke about the whole thing, which is, paid $250,000 to see the Titanic, received the full Titanic experience.
Yep.
Jimmy's not here with us currently. He's always here with us in spirit. But I think that's a pretty apt way to put it.
Yeah, I think that nails it pretty friggin' well. Yeah, it's pretty good. I was hoping he would get a little bit more of the crush depth science, but I think he covers a lot of the bases really well, specifically in sense of, yeah, you can't miss the irony of a bunch of people who are going on an expedition on an unfit oceanic vehicle to go see a ship at the bottom of the ocean that sank because, well, hubris. The same as hubris has killed a lot of people in this situation between them calling. I feel like as soon as you say something is unsinkable or anything like that, you're automatically asking for trouble, which is what did the Titanic end. And also these people were like, oh yeah, this vessel can handle it. And it sounds like it did handle it a bunch of times, but they just, they shot their shot one too many times. And yeah, finally the material was like, yeah, this is just fatigued and now we're done. So fuck them.
If you dare the world will eventually catch up with you.
Yeah, and the sad part is, yeah, it sounds like this guy got away with it for a while using this thing to go down, and yeah, and finally, the cat ran out alive, so to speak.
Yeah, and we mentioned last week as well that it'll be in the news cycle for another few days until, eventually it just phases out. Right now, they're recovering the different pieces, like I'd mentioned before. You saw some of like the, I guess, cranes or machinery that they're using to remove the pieces from the water. And some of it, you can see the Ocean Gate logo on them. And they believe they found some type of human remains that need to be tested to be sure. But I don't even know what you would find at this point. Because like we were talking about the implosion, the science. You had mentioned the Mythbusters segment where they had the one diving suit and they put the pig parts and blood inside of it to simulate a human being being in a diving suit at certain depths.
Mm-hmm.
I rewatched that segment. I remember watching it on Discovery back in the day. As I rewatched it, especially in line with the current event news of the submersible, I couldn't in good conscience post it because it seemed horrific. I was like, oh wow, if that is indeed what happens, again, because I've seen the episode before, considering 5 people in this tiny little compact submersible, and it happened to them in like in an instant, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to leave it alone. We'll cover it some other way or somehow, but, if somebody wants to go find that clip of Mythbusters, it's been making the rounds again because of the news cycle. So you can check it out. You can see where the diving helmet itself starts to crack and implode on itself a little bit, along with whatever gruesomeness happens in the porthole of the helmet itself.
Yeah, it's kind of gnarly.
So yeah, I forgot to post the speech from Jaws, which I wanted to put up. I'll probably do it shortly before I put this episode up. But yeah, I figured we'd touch upon that one, especially since we got some thoughts from Jimmy. And like you said, you were hoping a little bit more of the scientific end, but Jimmy just wanted to give his thoughts. I was like, hey, look, I'll take whatever you give me, bud.
No, it's pretty cool. That was good thinking. It didn't even occur to me to shoot him an email, but so yeah, good thinking on that front there, fella.
So we're gonna start off the show a little bit differently.
Okay.
I mean, we just covered the Titan submersible once again. Do a little follow up on that one. I came up with an idea, and I wanted you to help me workshop. So we're gonna do a little improv exercise. I figured, okay?
Uh-oh. All right.
This should be right up your alley. So we were going to a friend's house, I think like 2 weekends ago, and we were spending time with friends. We were poolside having fun, and for some reason, this idea popped in my head. Back in the day when I was on the independent scene, the idea of being the opening act for a wrestling show, the curtain jerker, was always kind of like, you get out there, you do your thing, and that's it. You're supposed to, in theory, you're supposed to set the tone for the show. Oftentimes, if you're the quote-unquote curtain jerker, it seemed like a low position. Like you were just going to go out there, do a few minutes, and then off you go. You just hang out in the back with the boys, or get your pay and leave, whatever the case is. While we were hanging out, I came up with, and this needs some workshopping, so this is why I'm bringing it to you. If I were ever to step in the ring again, I would like to do this gimmick. So nobody fucking steal it. Although versions of this gimmick do exist. And that is something along the lines of the Jersey Curtain Jerker. That would be the nickname. You go out in whatever like ridiculous attire, whether it's a suit or something fancy, whatever the case is. You go out with sunglasses, your hair slicked back, you maybe have a scarf over your shoulders. You have a manager with you, okay? They start the show, your music kicks on, you walk out there, you step in between the ropes, you get into the ring, they give you the microphone, but before you speak, you take a moment, you go over, off microphone, talk to your manager, and forcefully gesture to him or her, depending, to walk over to the announce booth and demand your pay up front. This takes like about a minute or two in the act of itself. They go, they grab the envelope, they give it to you. You pantomime counting whatever the case is. And then you start whatever promo. And you just begin by insulting the crowd. I'm not going to sit here and talk to you until I had my pay up front. You can't pay me enough to stand in front of this disgusting, sweaty, insert town name here, people, and do whatever it is you expect me to do. Like just berate the crowd, like a Jake the Snake Roberts, not Jake the Snake, Ravishing.
Rude?
Yes, thank you, Ravishing Rick Rude. Just tear them down, make fun of them, whatever the case is. Low-hanging fruit. Just go for it. And you do this on and on and on until finally people get fed up. Maybe you jaw jack back and forth with the promoter or whatever announcer there is. Pick out somebody in the front row. But then the music hits or whatever, maybe local guy that might be there or a sponsor, whatever the case is. I'm drawing off of like my past experience. They come out and they do a few moves on you. Granted, you get your shtick out on them first, but then they surprise you. They hit you with a finisher or hit you with something, and then sends the crowd into a frenzy because now after they've just been made fun of and demeaned, the local hero comes out, saves the day, and boom, you pop the crowd and you leave embarrassed, disheveled, whatever the case is. Don't forget your scarf. Don't forget your pay envelope, and you walk out. What do you think?
Okay. I think it would work. Well, I mean, it hits all the notes you want to hit. It's a good way to open the show. I think I'd be lying to you if I said I've seen some iteration of this a few times before.
That's what I'm saying.
Or no, I'd be lying to you if I'd said I'd never seen any iteration of this before, I should say.
This exists in some form in the world of professional wrestling. There's no way it doesn't exist. I'm not saying I've come up with this amazing original idea, but I'm just saying you market it as the Jersey curtain jerker. Like that's part of the shtick. Like it's actually up front in front of everybody. That's what you are. But you know that you're stuck in this position. So rather than trying to make good on it or be positive about it, you just take all your frustration out in the crowd and just have at it. And just go out there for maybe 5-10 minutes at most. And the actual action of the match is maybe 2 to 3 minutes at most. It's very low impact. Maybe whatever finisher you take might be a high point or high impact, high risk, whatever the case is. But it's minimal in respect to the rest of the show. So you're not stealing anybody's thunder. You're not going out there and taking up too much time. All you're doing is inciting the crowd. You're sparking that flame for the night. And hopefully the next match can carry it and so on and so forth.
Okay.
I'm thinking, and I'm not going to pursue this one too heavily, but if I can talk to some people, maybe I might try to workshop it. Maybe do some smaller shows and see how it goes. The last thing I want to do is be a classy Freddie Blassie and get stabbed somewhere. Because that would be...
I don't know if I think that era might be behind us there, guy.
I'm hoping so. Because nowadays, some shit can happen out of nowhere. And the last thing I need is... Well, actually, now that I think about it, if you do get attacked by a fan, I guess you succeeded in some way.
Yeah.
Because you've pissed them off to that point where they're like, no, fuck this guy. And just get out there and maybe take a punch or a kick and just hopefully security or whoever's around for that night will be able to get you to safety. But, just to incite the crowd and get them going. Because I figured at this point, I'm getting older. I'm not going to be able to pull off any moves. But I do miss the ring in certain respects.
Okay.
So, at the very least, go out there, do something. Give me an excuse to buy a nice suit. Wear it for a wrestling show. Why else would I buy a suit?
You don't even have to buy it. Don't you still have your wedding suit?
Yeah, but I don't want to ruin that.
Okay, fair. All right. Well, then you could take another trip to the Diplomat Club in beautiful Elizabeth, New Jersey.
Oh, look at that. Buzz marketing.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. Like I said, it popped in my head. It stuck there for a few days. I couldn't get out. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to tell Doug about this. Maybe he might have some thoughts. And I just figured I'd get it out there. At the very least, see what happens. It's been a while since I've even been to a local show. No, I can't even speak. But I do know a few guys that are still running shows in the area. So I might give it a shot. But the problem is, depending on the crowds, some of the crowds are done for certain community centers and certain groups. So you have to be very careful with the words that you pick sometimes. The last thing you need to do is pick a word that's no longer deemed nice, and then suddenly you're like, "Oh, you've gone too far. That's it. You're done." So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Well, hey, give it a shot. See what happens. Really, when you get down to brass tacks, I mean, that's not a bad way to open up the show because it's going to be, like you said, it's nice and quick. It gets the crowd into it, and it gives them exactly what they want. It gives them a reason to cheer. Give them a reason to boo the bad guys and cheer the good guys and see the bad guy get his comeuppance. Okay, it's the only thing I'd add in there. If you're going to insult the crowd, they're expecting all the normal stuff, like, just running down the town they're in and running them down on their appearances. What I would recommend for that is you have to be a little bit more cerebral, I think. Like,
Okay.
before the show starts. Like, just look at the crowd. Just see who you see. Pick out stuff about the crowd. Like, see what you can see. Like, anybody can call them, like, fat, sweaty, and out of shape, from blah, blah, blah town and all that. That's easy. But, like, really look at them and really look at each person and see if you can find something you can pick at verbally.
Okay.
And that way you can really, and if you do it, because really if you think about it, it's us versus them. It's the crowd versus you. So if you put them all on the same page and you start going after individuals and you're very specific about stuff, yeah, that's I think when you can really, really, really like get to them a little bit more and actually get like, because at this point, I mean, the stuff you're talking about, yeah, Rick Rude did it very well, but Rick Rude also did that. That was like 35 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's been done, and I'm sure Rick Rude probably ripped it off from somebody else who was doing it in the territories before that.
Exactly.
So yeah, so poke around, then that's what I would say. Like, look at the crowd very closely and see what you can see, and you can figure out something to use. Speaking of improv skills, like, if you really want to go for it, like, is there somebody in the crowd who's wearing? Is there an old timer in the crowd wearing like one of those hats that you buy at the Army Navy stores that says Vietnam veteran?
Oh, God.
Okay. Well, hey, if you want to make it work, look at him and be like, well, yeah, it's like, I don't know if I'd be so proud of a war we fucking lost, asshole, or something like that.
See, there you go.
Yeah, it's like nice It's like your generation bitches about men having people getting participation trophies. Why would you wear a hat for a war you lost? So, stuff like that,
Perfect heel material.
What's that?
Perfect heel material.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, if you're going to do it stuff like that. I mean, I have read like one of the best, whatchamacallits, the best heels are the ones who think they're completely justified, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So work off of that. Yeah.
Yeah, because like as you mentioned, and we mentioned the name before, Ravishing Rick Rude. I can't think of the last time I saw somebody come out and do something along those lines where they'll just insult the crowd before going on to demolish their opponent. And
MJF.
What's that?
MJF.
Has he? I haven't. Is that from AEW?
Yeah, he's the current AEW champion, Maxwell Jacob Friedman. I don't want to say lives the gimmick, but it's very rare to find him out of character. Even to the point where there's video of him like doing like convention appearances, and like people will walk up to like get like his action figure signed, and he'll sign it, then he'll immediately like he'll look right at the person and just like throw it on the floor. Or if like somebody comes up and be like, and somebody comes up with their kid or something like that, they'll be like, wow, your kid is ugly. Yeah. Okay. And it is a little ham-fisted, but at least he's one of those guys who's not like, yeah, they got me playing the role on TV, but I'm just a regular guy. At least he's trying to say, it's like, yeah, he's at least trying to like take it forward another step. Does it always work? No, but he's also a young guy and he's still got a lot to figure out, because I think he's only like in his he's in his like mid to late 20s maybe.
Oh God.
But yeah, he spends half of his promos are just insulting the fans and the other half are insulting whoever he's feuding with. So,
well, there you go. So somebody is doing along those lines, but it's always, especially for around the New Jersey scene, it could be something where it just starts off the night and gives you the big pop to begin the night, and then hopefully from there all the other workers can maintain and ride that wave of momentum, of enthusiasm.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, I just wanted to see what you thought, and I like your bit about trying to find out something that in the crowd, and especially like the Vietnam bet. That's something that it could be very useful down the line. We'll see what happens.
Absolutely, and you pick on. I mean, Americans, we have this weird fascination with veterans. Part of it good, part of it I think somewhat unhealthy. But yeah, you want to piss off a crowd. Oh yeah, that'll piss off a crowd, but good, to the point where it's like, yeah, yeah, you might want to go out there with a roll of quarters too, because if any fan jumps you that way, you can crack them in the jaw good and hard.
Okay. I'll have to keep that in mind. I have to write this stuff down when I'm doing editing. I have to make sure to
There you
make some notes. We'll see what happens. If it ever, I can't promise it'll come to fruition, but if it does, I'll make some updates and see what happens. But I just thought it was a fun idea. It's a way to try to get back into the ring where I'm not doing too much. Because again, I'm not going to kill myself at this point. It's a young man's game, and there are far many younger and more talented people out there doing it nowadays than I ever could. So let them shine. Let me just go out there, have a little bit of fun, and then whoever is the local guy can come out and get a spot to shine, and that's about it. So helping out, giving back to the business. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens as far as that's concerned. Have you been keeping up with the writer strike?
No, I've been kind of out of touch with stuff this past week. Things have been challenging the last week or so. But no, what's the news?
Well, unfortunately, there isn't really much new news to report on other than they're still striking. So we're almost at 2 months now that they've been doing this.
Wow.
It looks to be going on for some time. People are saying that it might go through the summer, so we have to wait and see. But more specifically, the Screen Actors Guild, their vote is going to be coming up real soon because they are also negotiating for new terms and new contracts. They all are also trying to avoid the use of AI to recreate them or, represent them on film or TV without their consent. So AI rights are becoming a big thing, especially since now, especially in the Star Wars movies, they've done recreations of Mark Hamill. Mark Hamill more specifically in The Mandalorian. Carrie Fisher at the end of Rogue One. What was the other gentleman's name? Peter Cushing in Rogue One, when they did the General Grand Moff Tarkin recreation, which kind of hit the uncanny valley a little bit. But in all these instances, they've had permission from the actor or the estate. So those are all approved ahead of time. But people are worried that, later down the line, if you sign on to a movie franchise, let's say, you agree to do the first movie, you run into a problem with the director, you've already signed on for your contract, and your contract stipulates, even if you drop out, we can still use your 3D representation, whatever the case is. So that's one thing they're trying to avoid. And then the other one was better pay. Because not only... I don't know how this one's going to work out, to be honest, because I don't follow the pay scale for the Screen Actors Guild. But they're saying that with the rising costs in general, of the cost of living, and recently inflation, that they need to be paid better. I don't know how you justify that one. I don't know how that one works out. But pay and AI looks to be their main goal. So it's very similar to what's going on with the writers. They're worried about AI for script writing and creation, and they want streaming residuals. So we'll see how that all turns out. Something, I can't remember if it was 94 or 96%. It's in the 90s, the percentage as far as the Screen Actors Guild that have voted and said, yes, we give permission to strike if our negotiations or our needs are not met as far as negotiations. So we'll see how that one all pans out. The Directors Guild has already approved, and they're voting to ratify their contracts. So it looks like we could be looking at another round of reality television if things Yeah, exactly. If things don't pan out with contracts real soon. So we have to wait and see. But all this I bring up specifically because one show in particular is going to be delayed indefinitely until it's all signed, sealed, and delivered as far as contracts. And that show is The Boys on Amazon.
Okay.
Season 4 is already wrapped. They're done filming. They have not announced any dates yet, but people have been asking, hey, when are you guys going to release Season 4? Kripke, the creative force behind The Boys, along with his team, has already said, we'll release the show as soon as we get information as far as what's going on with the writer's strike, and that's done and resolved. And when people asked them to clarify, they said, look, the show is done filming. They've wrapped. But there is certain dialogue that needs to be written or rewritten in ADR. So they have to go back and add certain things here and there to clarify certain plot points or to maybe change a line or whatever the case is. And ADR is done after the fact, so they can't do any of the writing or rewriting without writers. So with that in mind, they don't want to push forward without having that ability to do that and bringing back the actors that are necessary. So once the writers are cleared and go back to work, season 4 is in limbo for now.
Oh, interesting.
Thoughts?
Well, on the writer's strike or the boys?
Either one.
The boys TV show I've been remarkably uninterested in.
Really?
Yeah, I got through season 1. I muddled through it. God, that came out like 4 years ago already, I think, something like that.
Yeah, about that.
I remember watching season 1, kind of being, that was fine, and then never gave a shit about watching any of the other seasons.
Okay.
It was one of those deals where I was like, well, the comic book was really good, and I'm just really kind of uninterested in everything else going on with this. And I've been told it gets way better. Like, unfortunately, it was another one of those deals where season 1 was laying the groundwork, so to speak. But there's so much, I'm drowning in content to watch right now. I am behind on goddamned everything. So it's one of those situations where and it's funny actually. As of tomorrow, my Amazon account is being shut down, just because I barely ever use it. So
Okay.
The boys is going to be one of those things I'm just going to get to when I get to. As for the writer's strike, I mean, I'm actually surprised it's gone on this long. I figured that would have been done after a month or so, but yeah, I mean, they keep on rolling on, which is really sad because we're seeing. Bloody hell, I'm trying to remember what I read. We've been seeing a push for unionization in this country not seen in decades. I mean, just look no further than the amount of Starbucks that are unionizing. Jobs that were never associated with a union before have been unionizing a lot. Hell, I recently read a story in Los Angeles. All the workers at the strip club, all the strippers unionized.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there
okay.
was a big story I saw pop up in a couple of newspapers. I'm going to say that was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. But finally we're getting to this point where a lot of workers are realizing more and more, they're out there working their asses off. They've worked through the pandemic in a lot of regards, dealt with unsafe working conditions, never got raises, were told, well, it's just not on the books. We just can't do it. And then meanwhile, they turn around and look at the corporation that they're working for, and they see them news release, blah, 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 corporation, has made record profits for the fiscal year ending 2022. So you start looking at stuff like that, and you compare the two, and you say, it's like, well, you're making money hand over fists. This is coming 5 years after the Trump tax cuts, where you and we got a nice little bump here and there, like $40-50 a paycheck or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But meanwhile, the amount of money that corporate America and wealthy people got back was fucking huge, to the point where nobody spurred on. They didn't hire new people, because why would they hire more people than they needed? Yeah, it just kicked into effect the biggest stock buyback in the history of corporate America, I believe.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, throw on top of that, and then now, fast forward 2022, 2023, everybody's screaming about inflation, and I'm saying, how much of it is really inflation and how much of it is price gouging, as companies are now posting record profits?
That's been coming up more and more, especially in the news, that inflation really isn't what everybody thought it was. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you're right. It's unfortunate that, and again, we don't get into too much of politics on here, but when stuff like that happens, and they always say, hey, look, this decision is going to be good for the guys down at the bottom or in the middle, whatever the case is, the whole trickle-down thing, that really doesn't ever pan out the way they say it's going to. And the rich get richer and the poor get poorer.
The only thing the poor get is a fucking cock in the ass.
Yeah.
And not in a fun way either.
I guess it depends on who you ask. I don't know. Again,
Well,
these days is
fun
different.
or it could be unfun, so take your pick.
Yeah. But no, it's unfortunate, but you're right. And stuff like that is very, very, it seems like nowadays, especially, people are more quick to point out things that they believe to be untruth, and whether they can back it up with actual facts. Like I said, I've been seeing a lot more stories calling all this inflation, because that's what it initially was. Prices kept going up, cost of living went up, It was unfortunate because you would see, your money flying out the door faster than usual. But now they're saying, oh no, it's not inflation, price gouging. Of course they're going to pop up the prices wherever they can because they know you're spending, so they're going to try to get a little bit more from you, and nobody's stopping them from raising the prices. If they say, oh,
Hmm.
inflation, then they can just mask it with that in mind and just keep making money. So yeah, it's sickening is what it is, to be honest. But that was one of the points that was brought up with the screen actors as far as why they're asking for additional money. Because they're saying that, yeah, prices have gone up. They say inflation, but they do also mention price gouging in the one story that I read. So,
No, and that's unfortunately where we are. It's gotten to this point where it's just become so cravenly blatant of how they're just number one price gouging everybody and hoarding money for, upper management and executives. Nobody else is going to get a piece of anything. They give, I mean, a lot of places they'll even fight over giving the cost of living increase in a lot of places. So, it's unfortunately these are the issues that are really causing a lot of the trouble in this day and age. And we don't need anything else turning up the heat in this country right now, but unfortunately that is doing it as well. Because we have enough, the culture war is on boil as it is right now. We're effectively two nations. I'm beginning to really, really wonder if there's going to be a second civil war in this nation, but it's going to be remarkably different than it was back in 1865.
yeah.
So it's going to make things a lot worse, and it's just going to get, as we go into an election year next year, it's going to get worse.
Oh, yeah, because everything's going to be amplified. All the different news outlets are going to try to use it to their advantage for more ratings. It's going to be another circus show. And
Hmm.
it's been getting worse and worse progressively, and I don't know. I'm at a loss for words for it because really I try not to get in too much as far as the deep politics of it, because once you go too far down, you start getting into conspiracy theories and people who just, the loud minority that wants to wave their flag and yell at the top of their lungs. They try to be the ones getting the most coverage, but it's, the more sensible heads on either side unfortunately don't have much to say, or at least they're not as loud and they kind of get drowned out. So cooler heads don't usually prevail in this situation, at least not in the media and not in different news stories. So it's tough either way to really read certain news articles. And I've talked about before, and I always keep this in mind whenever I try to read different news articles. I'll try to read from different news outlets, but sometimes it can just get frustrating because you don't want to be stuck in an echo chamber where, let's say, CNN in this case will continue to lean left, and that's all you're going to get is that left wing opinion over and over again if you keep reading just that one. Meanwhile, if you try to read Fox, you'll get the right wing, and sometimes it can get frustrating. Sometimes it can get kind of laughable on both ends, but the same thing. Like it's if you don't agree one way or the other, you're kind of stuck, and then all this just becomes a shouting match back and forth.
Yeah, you're exactly correct. I mean, I take a few issue with a couple of the things you said in there, but I'm trying not to get us too deep into the weeds of all of this.
Understandable, because like I said, it's not something that's normally gone through here. I mean, we've done it in the past. I think Jimmy's brought it up a few times, and you have as well. But it's just like, how much time do you want to spend on hammering home your opinion on something when somebody can just come out and say something untruthful and use it as fact, at least as far as they're concerned, and then suddenly like it just becomes back and forth as you're trying to disprove one another, and nobody tries to prove anything of actual merit.
No, and well, there's multiple. Well, it's not just even. I don't even think of this as left wing, right wing anymore. To be perfectly honest with you,
Okay.
um, at the end of the day, there's so many more variables happening.
Well, yeah, the one thing I've been noticing more and more is each side they're starting to get like subdivisions, and I don't know. For that, it gets more complicated and more frustrating because now you got to see. So let's say if you are, you know, pick either one, left or right, whatever you are, you used to say, right wing or conservative or Republican, or what are some of the other names that they use now? Now I've heard rhinos, Republicans in name only. I'm trying to think of, I think neocons for the left. Um,
Neocons?
was that the one for the left, or is that the right?
No, neoconservatives.
Thank you. Okay. See,
Okay, so hold on. So generally, neoconservative is used. That generally refers to a lot of the politics that came up in the era of George W. Bush presidency from 2001 to 2009, give or take.
mm-hmm.
This was more. This was kind of like a transition point between what used to be called paleoconservative, going into neoconservative. And that, like I said, it really came to fruition during the George Bush Jr.'s administration. But depending on how you want to slice of it, some of it even kind of goes back to the Reagan Revolution in 1980.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out how to put making a 30,000-foot view on this shit is not my strong point. So I'm trying to figure out how to say this as eloquently and concisely as possible. But the problem is when you get to, like, you could say right, you can say left, and you can say stuff like that all you want. But yeah, it's definitions shift, definitions change over time. I mean, there's so many subgroups and stuff like that. But really, when you really break it down to the whole thing, it's really rich people versus poor people in my eyes.
Yeah, it definitely comes down to that. I mean, they'll use whatever labels they want to try to rally people one way or the other, but I completely agree with that idea.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it this way. I mean, I can't help but notice. I mean, the culture war is been what it's been in the United States for years, taking on different forms and shapes and stuff like that. But if you really think about a lot of the people who are really getting divided over this, it's regular working class folk like you and I. And I can't help but wonder if one of the reasons for that is, well, I mean, I don't know if you've got any of the, it was tough to find because as much as you want to say right-wing or left-wing news, if you really think about it, a lot of our news is really corporate owned in this country.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard anything about what was going on in France over in May and June?
In terms of
the giant demonstrations that were on the streets and some of the big strikes?
I did hear some of that. Actually, this morning I was reading some of it during break.
Okay. So out of nowhere, I think Emmanuel Macron is the current president of France, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Out of nowhere, him and the rest of the government, they ramrodded through an increase of the retirement age from 62 to 64. And what happened was people took to the streets in a big fucking way, to the point where, I mean, like, even the cops basically got repelled in a few places where they basically just chased them out of there. Because they were getting pelted with rocks and bottles and garbage cans and shit like that, because people were pissed because they were basically just said, no, you're working for 2 more years because, well, we've decided that we need to make more money, or we've decided whatever, for take your pick. I didn't get too deep into it, but I couldn't help but notice that, hey, what happened? All the working folks got into the streets. If that happened here in the United States right now, I don't know if people would actually get together and do anything about it.
That's a good question.
No, because if we've learned anything, the news outlets are owned by corporate America, regardless how you slice it. It's tough to find independent news media. And if you do, you basically have to analyze the hell out of everything they're saying to figure out exactly what their bend is, so you can figure out whether or not you're getting, well, you can't even think about it. It's like you're never going to get objective information. Everything is going to be subjective because it's coming through somebody's lens. So it might be conscious or it might be unconscious.
Yep.
All you can do is try to gather as much information as you can and try to distill it down. And that's where it gets exhausting. But therein lies part of the trick for this entire thing. And it's tough to figure it all out because there's so many moving pieces. And you've got, and you got so many fucking wackadoos out there too. I mean, Jesus Christ, there are people out there screaming that Fox News is too woke, so they only get their news from like fucking Newsmax or One American News or, even some of the crazier shit like that. So, yeah, you got to realize, like, things are pretty fucking wild right now. So,
there was one news outlet I've been following, and they're on YouTube. Breaking Points. I don't know if you've heard of them.
Breaking Points. Who's on that? I'm
Uh,
trying to remember.
Sagar and Jetty and Crystal Ball.
Oh, I know Crystal Ball. Yeah, yeah.
You,
She also does stuff with
Kyle
Kyle Kalinske,
Kalinske.
who does secular talk. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Uh,
I've been watching him for years now.
Crystal and Kyle recently got married, but Sagar and Crystal used to be on, I believe it was The Hill, which was another news network. But they
Okay,
noticed that at certain points, they were starting to be told what to cover and what not to cover. And they were like, wait a
okay.
minute, no, that's not what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be covering it all. Like, you can't tell me not to touch a certain subject. So that prompted them to leave The Hill and start their own news network, Breaking Points. They do a lot of
Hmm.
stuff through Patreon, a lot of stuff through donors who help them grow the network. And they're doing that bit by bit. So Sagar is your Republican, Crystal is your Democrat, and they each take turns tackling different subjects. And at the very end of each program, they have their own I can't remember what it's called. Their own little like talking point where they pick a certain subject in the news and they do the breakdown of it specifically. Otherwise, they go back and forth, and they sometimes they agree, sometimes they disagree, but they do it through mutual understanding that they're covering the news. And yeah, they'll throw in their opinion here and there, but for the most part, they get along, and they put together this show just for that, for an unbiased, non corporate run entity that allows them to cover whatever they want. And I'll give them a lot of credit because they have little things set up for the studio and everything else, but sometimes they can't do it. Like recently, they remodeled actually to try to improve the overall production, and they did the show remotely from home, and they would pretty much like call into whoever's dealing with the traffic or dealing with the recording itself, and would broadcast it on their YouTube channel. So you can become a subscriber, you can help them out, and they always say we're doing this to try to help out, get the news out to everybody. Especially with the 2024 election coming up, they're trying to gear up and be ready to cover all the nonsense that's coming down the pipe. So it's refreshing to get that. The only thing for me is that I wish that I could get news without the op-ed. Like, it's one thing to report the news, but then when you give me your spin on it, your take, your opinion, it kind of colors it a certain way, and then from there I kind of get lost because I'm like, I don't need to hear your opinion. It's one thing to clarify or to describe certain news topics or how things are being played out, but because if you are left or right wing, whatever the case is, once you start putting on your opinions and thoughts of it, then you're pretty much spinning it to your ideology, which I dislike.
Hmm.
I like pure facts, pure news. But even then, sometimes you'll see people taking whatever they can find and start spinning it, again, to whichever side they lean or whichever side they support. But Breaking Points has been the one that I've enjoyed the most because you do get the wide range of topics, and they'll cover whatever the case is. And they're pretty good as far as getting in depth, giving you some backstory if you're not familiar with the particular news story, and they'll just do a deep dive and present it as best they can in a segment oriented show.
Okay, there you go. All right.
So there were a few other ones I was trying to watch. The Young Turks started out really interesting, but they kind of lost me. I think they're more left leaning, and they don't get me wrong, it's not bad. It's just that after a while, the some of the on air hijinks got kind of silly for me. And then what was the other one? Well, I mentioned before, The Hill. The Hill started off the same way, where they were actually being down the line, calling it as it was. I make them sound like referees. um, they're doing their best to present the news as it was, but again, once you get certain corporate bigwigs involved or anybody with lots of money, suddenly they start using that platform to steer it towards their agenda, and at that point, you lose the purpose of being a news outlet. That's not what you're supposed to be doing. It's like with journalists. You really don't have pure journalism anymore, because every time somebody's putting a story out nowadays, they want to try to drive you to their site for clicks or ratings, whatever the case is. So already they're kind of giving up a certain amount of, I guess you can say, credibility, only because they're trying to entice you to continue following their story or follow their viewpoint. And from there, it gets a little weird. Not to say that there's no actual journalists out there. There are a few out there that you could probably follow and enjoy and get good news from. But again, because it's a rat race as far as attention and eyeballs and clicks and ratings, it's harder to maintain a following or an audience than it was back on, let's say, on the cable. Like when people would watch Tom Brokaw, because who else was watching anything? There was only a limited number of channels. So when you turned on the news, your news anchor was just that. There weren't many others. Now,
well, no, you had Tom Brokaw, you had Dan Rather, and you had Peter Jennings on the three major networks.
There you go.
Years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have a litany of different talking heads. They're going to try to give you their spin, their take, whatever is written on the teleprompter, and they read that off ad nauseum. And from there, it's just like, all right, enough. You're right. With all the corporations backing these news networks, it gets frustrating after a while to get the actual news. Because if they have a buddy who's in politics or somebody who's on the Supreme Court or on, a congressional seat, then they're like, oh, we're going to do a favor and run this story or not run that story because it puts them in a bad light. Whatever the case is, it just, meh.
Well, my big complaint with the entire thing is they'll play that entire game where it's like we have to score points against the opposition, even if we're being hypocritical.
Yes.
And that's what all I ask is just be consistent with stuff. I'll give what was I'm trying to think of a good example of what it was. This was back during the Obama administration, so I think this was maybe in his second term. One day, he had the audacity to show up wearing a tan suit.
Yes, the infamous tan suit.
Yeah, and somebody on Fox News absolutely had a fucking shit fit about it. And really, at the end of the day, who fucking cares? I mean, there's about 100 other things I can complain about the Obama administration for, and many of the things I can complain about the Biden administration and the Trump administration and the Bush administration and the Clinton administration and all of that. I could give a shit if you're wearing a fucking goddamn tan fucking suit. Or just some of the silly little things like that they tried to use for this stuff. Or it was just the simple fact of, I'm trying to think of another good example. Anytime they criticized one politician for doing one thing because they had the wrong letter after their name, even though both parties are kind of shit, depending on how you want to break it down. But that's a whole other 3-hour conversation we're not going to have. But then their guy does the exact same thing, but they just kind of turn a blind eye to it and pretend that nothing happened. But I mean, the thing is that, part of this all started when they decided news had to be profitable. It's not supposed to be news.
Exactly. Well, it was like back in the day. I mean, we had a different version of this, and it wasn't so much ratings or clicks or, social media. It was newspapers. Who could sell the most newspapers? Mm-hmm. It's just evolved to a different medium as far as the news is concerned. Social media being pretty much their current iteration of it. I'd hate to see what comes after this, because already what current social media, like the amount of different, so if I scroll through, let's say, Twitter, because I get more random stuff through Twitter nowadays since they've updated their algorithms, I'll get random news outlets or random would-be journalists just trying to spew different things out in their small little tweet sections. And it's like, all right, scroll, ignore, scroll. I don't want to see all that nonsense, but it's kind of hard to ignore nowadays. And it just becomes a common thing. I remember there was, in the past week, I think I've had a few different things pop up in my feed on Twitter, and it says, subscribe to such and such for more content. I'm like, no, why? I don't want to read it to begin with. Why would I subscribe to something I don't even want to don't want to have on my screen? So it just becomes scroll, get rid of it. Facebook hasn't been as bad. And Instagram is just, Instagram. It's just a bunch of pictures, memes, or whatever the case is. Silly videos.
Oh, Instagram. without too much of a digression. Yeah, Instagram drives me nuts because I have no idea whose cornflakes I shit in, but I get the stupidest fucking ads and promoted posts on there. And they're always for these corny ass t-shirt companies where it's faux tough guy shit or weird Christian crap.
The problem is, if you don't give them enough information, they'll just shoot whatever they can your way and see what sticks as far as promotions or ads. But if you give them too much, then it gets kind of creepy. You're just like, no, 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 go away, go away.
Hmm.
Like right now, in our case, so Jen and I have been watching a lot of D&D related stuff. So now I'll get
Okay.
like D&D shirts or even stuff from D&D itself. Dice makers who are, making like special dice with like glitter inside of them or like a mini dragon inside. Like, all right, enough. I don't need all this extra crap. I just want to know the mechanics. We'll watch Critical Role, which is a D&D playing group made up of a bunch of voice actors. They'll do their stuff on YouTube and on Twitch. Stuff like that will follow for the story or for the gameplay. But you get all this other BS thrown your way. I remember my brother at one point, we were getting together for, a family barbecue. And he mentioned, and I find it funny because he was kind of like confessing without confessing. He goes, I clicked on this one, like, video of like this one girl. And now I'm getting like all these scantily clad women, shot in my algorithm. It's like, what do you click on there, bud? But yeah, depending on what you go for, they'll just say, oh, you like that? So they'll throw more stuff. So for me, at one point, I clicked on a bunch of workout videos for like weights or body weight exercises. And suddenly it just became just an onslaught of those types of videos. So it's like, okay, some are useful, some aren't. Some are funny, some are just downright useless. But a lot of stuff just gets regurgitated and sent your way. And it's now with this current version of social media, you're fighting against the algorithm, and it depends on how much you want to engage. Because if you want to look up Ari Shaffir, are you familiar with the comedian Ari Shaffir?
Unfortunately.
Well, he talks about an experiment that he tried on YouTube specifically, and that is, how do you want to engage with any kind of social media platform? And that's pretty much, let's face it, YouTube currently is that as well. So he started looking up nothing but cute puppy videos. And what did the algorithm spit back at him? More cute puppy videos. If you wanted to engage with the negativity, so if you saw a bad video and then you get pissed off and you want to react and you want to comment, or you want to, I don't know, do they do thumbs down anymore?
I don't know.
But if you want to engage with that negativity, then it would shoot back more negative videos, or at least more negative content your way, and incite you more, hoping that you would engage with the platform more, letting the algorithm gain more information about you, then hence giving you more videos that would piss you off. It becomes like a weird, vicious cycle. So if you look up cool stuff, if you like looking up props, if you like looking up cosplay stuff, you'll get a lot of that stuff brought to you. Every now and then they'll slip one in there that kind of pisses you off. Ignore it. Don't bother. Just don't even like, every now and then they'll give you the option of like, says, don't recommend this or don't show this video again, whatever the case is. Don't even bother with that, because now you're telling them what you do and don't like. Just ignore it. Check out the cool stuff. Check out the stuff that, has positivity, that's nice, whatever the case is, how you want to label it. But if you engage with the negative stuff, that's how the majority of social media gets you. They piss you off. They get your reactions. It's kind of like the idea that I had at the beginning of the show with the Jersey curtain jerker. It's negativity. You're getting the crowd to react to it, and once they react to it, you have them in the palm of your hand. Now you can steer that wherever you want. Ultimately, in that case, payoff is the good guy wins. But as far as the algorithm is concerned, they win every time you get pissed off at a video, or you comment something stupid, or you insult somebody in the comment threads, and then the ball just starts rolling further and further. And there's kind of like, I wouldn't say a point of no return, but it does get more and more difficult to get back to baseline in the algorithm if they already have certain inputs from you. I don't know, does that make sense?
No, that makes sense.
So,
And it's right, because, negative engagement. I mean, I have 2 Twitter accounts. One of them I follow one of them I follow some of my friends, and I also follow some politics on there. And generally, some atheist stuff on there too. And generally, all I see are fucking arguments. In fact, on that one, I spend way less time on that Twitter account than my secret sleaze one.
okay. No, wait, your secret sleaze one?
Well, yeah, because on Twitter, you can post all kinds of filthy shit and get away with it. So,
Okay, gotcha.
in fact, I took that one a little bit too deep one day, but yeah, generally I just use that one. I follow like a bunch of porn accounts. I follow a lot of like porn, like oh, here's like some teasers of some stuff I have coming out. If you like what you see, drop the $4.99 for a subscription to my OnlyFans, or you know, for some reason I'm not sure. I kind of bumbled into this one, and because I started following them, I got more. I follow a lot of British dominatrixes.
Interesting. Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, you'll find
Yeah.
lots of random shit on Twitter. Okay. Truth be told, I have three Twitter accounts, but they're justified.
All right.
So
Okay.
I have my personal Twitter account, which I use every now and then. I'll check out some information on games, movies, and different things. I have the Rabblecast page, which I've notoriously ignored many a times. I forget to update it, so I'm sorry for anybody who follows the Twitter account. It's not because I don't want to, it's because I get so damn busy and I forget to update it. So I try to post updates as best I can. And then the other one was for the business that we ran a couple years back, which sat dormant for the longest time, but for some reason in the past year has started shooting notifications my way more and more. And I don't know how, but now I'm starting to get porn suggestions off of that account.
Sweet.
I'm at work one day and something pops up. I'm like, screw it. Let me see what this is. It said something part whatever. I'm like, okay, whatever. I click on it. It's a full video. And it starts playing as soon as I open it. Thankfully, there was no sound. But like hardcore porn was going on. I'm like, holy shit. I'm at work trying to like swipe off of the screen real fast because I don't want anybody to walk past me seeing it. But at that point, I go to look through the notifications, and I'm noticing that more and more, like a lot of the adult stuff is being thrown my way on them. And I'm like, nobody else has access to this account. What the fuck? So the algorithm just said, hey, look, you were into this before. Now try this. So I was like, all right, kind of interesting. But again, even by clicking on that one video, now it knows. And eventually it's going to ask you, do you want to see more like this? Or do you want it to ignore this content? Whatever the case is. And just by answering yes or no, you're giving them inputs. And the algorithm will adjust accordingly for you. Make sense?
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird. So depending, I hate to say it, one of the things about this show that probably will never allow it to grow to where I want it to is the fact that I don't want to do the whole negativity angle. It's very easy to sit there and hate on something and tear something down and say, it's a piece of crap. I can't believe people spend their money on this. Whatever the case is, pick it, a movie, a game, a book, a celebrity, whatever the case is. It's very easy to try to tear somebody down. It's different when you're just trying to be, I don't want to say middle of the road, but at the very least, just try to highlight the better points of something, and then say,
Yeah.
a lot of people like this one, but it's just not for me. Or in my case, just if there's something that I don't like, I just don't talk about it. There's no point to waste my time on something that I don't like. If I don't like it, I don't like it. If somebody else does, hey, I've been adopting the mentality of don't yuck somebody else's yum.
That is I just used that expression the other day, actually.
Yeah, if somebody's into it, so long as it's not hurting somebody, let somebody enjoy something. I'm not going to sit there and say, you're a moron for liking such and such. Maybe they have like a deep-seated joy that comes from a particular topic or game or story, whatever the case is. If I don't like it, okay, I don't like it. I move on. Okay, so I'll give you one. For me, growing up, I was a huge fan of Ninja Turtles. I'm happy that the Ninja Turtles are having a nostalgia boom, and we're getting more Ninja Turtle stuff, games, movies, cartoons, content, whatever the case is. Also,
Yeah, I
growing
know
up,
a couple of collectors right now.
okay, there you go. Also growing up, there was a movie called The Sandlot.
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay, do you like the movie?
I never watched it.
Okay. No, my freaking tablet's
Oh,
telling me.
Alexa, shut her whore ass up.
That's funny. Apparently my tablet likes it. I watched it probably once. I don't even remember if I watched it all the way through. I disliked the movie. Everyone I grew up with, around me, around the neighborhood, whoever I've run into, will always say, oh, that movie's so great. I'm like, I don't like it. So while everybody else has their little nostalgia of it, or they have like a reminiscence of it, and they start going, oh, remember this scene, or remember that scene, like, no, I don't. I just don't want to talk about it. I don't like it. So, but I don't tear it down. I don't say it's stupid. I don't say, it's a waste of time. I just say, not for me. Move on.
And that's honestly, that is a lot of my experiences and stuff actually improved when I started doing that. So I have some friends of mine who are very deep into wrestling Twitter, and holy shit.
Okay.
The best example I could think of was recently AEW finally put out their video game Fight Forever,
Yes.
it's go ahead.
No, I just heard it got released recently.
So I believe it's supposed to be an iteration. It's the graphics are updated, but I think it's supposed to be using one of the game engines from like No Mercy or WCW NWO Revenge or WrestleMania 2000. One of those, the ones that people like because they were good game engines, and there's a lot of nostalgia for those. Because if you were playing them when you were like 10 or 15 or 20, you're 30 or you're 35 or 40 now.
Mm-hmm.
So be that as it may, it just came out, and yes, there are glitches in it, and yeah, they're probably going to be doing updates and patches and stuff like that. I literally saw threads of people complaining because they found a glitch in the game and just saying, "Well, this is just trash. This is a piece of shit." And it's the people. There are sadly people out there who are just like, WWE is automatically good and AEW is automatically bad, and vice versa. And honestly, I just look at it and I say, you know what? WWE isn't for me at this point in time. AEW has, I don't watch a ton of wrestling these days, but if I do, I usually end up watching AEW because I just, their style of wrestling is more interesting to me than what WWE is putting out right now. Does that mean that WWE is bad? No, I know tons of people still like it, and that's cool. I used to, and I did this for a little while, and I've stopped. If somebody else is, and like you said, if somebody else is getting happiness from something, go fucking enjoy yourself. The world's a goddamn mess. Everything's fucked up. If collecting wrestling action figures makes you happy, go fucking do it. If collecting Ninja Turtle toys makes you happy, go fucking do it.
Yeah.
If doing fucking macrame makes you happy, go fucking do it. If playing video games makes you happy, go fucking do it. And like you said, if nobody's getting hurt, fucking don't worry about what you don't like. Go worry about what you do like.
Exactly.
The one asterisk I'll add to that is politics. I generally don't like engaging with politics, but you want to know what? Yeah, really, as the old saying goes, if you don't turn on to politics, politics will turn on you.
Yes.
I mean, that's unavoidable. The problem is people who treat it like a fucking sporting event and not the goddamn fucking future of our goddamn country.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing you have to also keep in mind is a lot of people when they grow up, yeah, you'll have people who go into politics at an early age. You have like your debate clubs, mock, I can't remember what it's called. But they'll have different groups in schools, especially. Well, not promote, what I'm trying to say here. They'll encourage you to engage in that kind of speeches, open debates, open sharing of ideas, stuff like that, so you can actually have these kind of discussions, be informed, and hold your own, and not just kowtow to whoever is going to, be louder. Then there's other people who say, "Oh, politics, that's not for me." Like my mother-in-law doesn't like talking politics, but for some reason always has an opinion on politics. So it's like, all right, so either you want to engage in politics or you just don't want to have anybody tell you that you're wrong and here's the reasons why you're wrong. Like, if you're going to have an opinion, be prepared for somebody to say, no, have you considered this? Not necessarily saying you're wrong, but at the very least trying to educate you and say, okay, maybe you have some things right, but maybe you have a few things wrong.
Mm-hmm.
At the very least, again, open discussion, being prepared to discuss, debate, and have a rational conversation with somebody. No, it's never the case. If you start to go against the grain with her, then she just wants to shut down the conversation. And that's just ignorance. Let's just face it. That's just somebody who doesn't want to get too involved. And I get it. Sometimes you get lost in the mire and just, there's so much to go through. Like you said, it's like a 3-hour conversation to be had somewhere else. You can easily get lost in everything as far as all the different subjects are concerned, because you can always digress to another point or have another segue, whatever the case is. And it's tiresome. And especially if somebody who doesn't want to have the time to invest into it. But you do have to try to keep tabs on it somewhat because it does affect your day-to-day life. You're right. It's the future of our country, and it's our future. In my case, I don't really follow it more for me, even though it does affect me nowadays as far as like my retirement, my work is concerned, and just overall rights. I'm more concerned for my children at this point. What's going to affect them down the line? Like a lot of the stuff that happened now with and again, we can go much further on this one, but everything that happened with COVID, and they're saying the amount of money that was squandered, at least that's what the headlines refer to it as far as the money that was used for COVID relief. Where did all that money go? We don't know, but somebody's going to have to pay it back. And guess what? It's not you and me. It's going to be future generations. It might not even be my son's generation. It might be his son's generation. So my grandkids will end up having to pay for stuff that we did nowadays. And that just fucks the future up more and more for the younger generation. And for that's, again, increasingly frustrating. But I have to try to keep an idea open for him and hopefully educate him and his younger brother so that to show them, like, okay, these are the ideas or options that are available. It's up to you to pick which ones you want to follow or engage with. But just be mindful, these are the different steps. These are the different pitfalls. Hopefully you can make an intelligent choice, not like the current generation that keeps fucking up over and over again. So the current leaders just, again, they're doing it for profit, not for the betterment of our future. So all that shit, it sounds like the same old song and dance over and over again. And unfortunately, just morons keep getting elected into seats of power, and they stay there for long periods of time. And a lot of things should change. Some have in certain respects, but there's still a lot of old people in power that just keep affecting the future of the younger generation, and it's going to keep fucking up more and more and more.
Well, I'll add into that too. Also, one of the things that got us to where we are is the two-party system, gerrymandering, extreme bipartisanship, and the general point where a lot of people have where it's like, well, I can't be bothered to look what this person does. I'm just going to vote based on whatever letters after their name. Like somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene has absolutely no business being in Congress. Like, really, she does not. But she is in such a red fucking congressional district. There's no way you're going to get rid of her because people are just going to say, it's like, I don't give a fuck how crazy she is, but I refuse to vote for a Democrat.
Yeah. And then there's the people on the other end who say they'll vote blue no matter who.
I have less issue with that. And if you want to call me partisan, call me partisan. I generally don't like the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party strikes me more as they'd be like a mid to mild right-wing party if they were in Europe.
Okay, I
but
can see that.
It's a lot better than the current shit show we have in the Republican Party. And there's a certain word I'm avoiding using right now that I'm very tempted to, but I'm trying not to because I don't want to be called alarmist. But be that as it may, when you have a party where in whole sections of it, do they really give a shit about what's going on in terms of regular people and whether or not they can pay their bills? No, because they're too busy having shit fits because anybody who's LGBTQI is automatically a groomer.
Yeah.
And that's the shit where I can tell quite a few of them probably don't really give a shit, but hey, they're like, this is easy points to score and we can just fire up our base, not realizing that this ultimately will lead to shootings.
Yeah,
and it's already led to fucking fire bombings.
That's the other thing too. You just with that last piece right there you just talked about, they know what buttons to press to mobilize their supporters or their base, and from there they can just easily do hot button topics, and then suddenly they get rowdy and it becomes more news. It just this is definitely a conversation we'd have somewhere else, but.
Yeah, and I got and like I said, I got little to no love, especially, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but a friend of mine is running for a county level political position up north. She's on the Democratic ticket, and the amount of problems she's already running into just from the Democratic side is off the charts because her and her group are actually trying to like change some things and not just try to keep like some level of status quo. And some of the stuff that she's already told me, and I'm like, you got to be fucking kidding me. So.
God. The Jersey Curtain Jerker can save us all. Run
I
on
hate to
the-
bring it down, but I hate to bring it down, but this has been kind of what I've been keeping an eye on lately. I mean, shit.
No, and you're right, because unfortunately, when you open up, I used to say you open up a newspaper, but now when you open up a web page, when you get your news topics, it's flooded with a whole bunch of different things. And again, depending on what site you want to follow, you're going to get that skew on the story itself. You can get the same story from two different sites and have two completely different opinions, and they're all pitted against one another. It's frustrating, because like, who do you listen to? Who do you rely on? Who do you think is giving you the actual truth? There's so many different versions of the truth, quote unquote. They'll say, oh yeah, but have you considered this? And just fuck off. Is it cut and dry? Absolutely not. Can you spin it different ways? They've been doing it for a long time now. But overall, you've got to make decisions what you believe will be for the betterment of your future, or in my case, my family's future. And hopefully that, that means we can get along better, that we can help one another and, build a better tomorrow, not worry about who's fucking more popular or who has more money or who has more influence, because none of that shit's going to last.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it seems like you were saying before, it seems like the people with money are the ones who just want to hold on to it, and the people below them, they want to keep them right where they are.
Well, there's I'm trying to remember the term for it. I believe the term for it is the pathology of greed, where basically how much money is enough is one of the ways I look at it. Jeff Bezos, head of Amazon, I mean, what is he at? Like 160 billion dollars?
Well, he has half of that now. He's divorced.
Okay, but still, okay, so half of that. So he's got $75 billion. What the fuck do you do with $75 billion?
That's a problem I would love to have.
But I mean, honestly, here, think of it this way. Do you know, and this is actually something I ran the numbers on this in Microsoft Excel once, just because I wanted to see if it was true or not. Do you know, can you really fathom the difference between a million and a billion?
No, and that's mostly because, well, one, I've never had that much, and two, again, what are you going to do with either one? Like, spending it, I mean, granted, yes, the million you could spend a lot faster than the billion, but still, that's just an insane amount of money either way.
Well, here, let me break it down for you in a way that's more relatable and relatable to our listeners.
Okay.
So 1 million seconds ago, what's today? To pull the curtain back a bit, we're recording this. It's Thursday, June 29th.
Mm-hmm.
1 million seconds ago was about roughly 11 days, give or take. So it was about June 18th. Okay?
Okay.
1 billion seconds ago, it was 1992.
Fuck. Okay.
And if you or anybody listening, if that sounds ridiculous to you, break out the calculator and the pen and paper. Take 1 million seconds, divide that by 60 to take it down to minutes, divide that by 60 again, take it down to hours, then divide that by 24 to take it down to days. Then do the same thing with 1 billion, divide it by 60, then divide by 60 again, divide by 24, and you're going to see how many that is. And if you really want to make it easy, here's a fun little trick in Microsoft Excel not a lot of people know about that I kind of dumbassed my way into. Dates are represented strictly as numerical values. If you put in a 0 in Microsoft Excel and you flip it over to a date format, it will come up as January 0, 1900. So technically the number 1 in Microsoft Excel represents January 1st, 1900.
Oh, interesting.
So if you want to type in today's date, if you typed in June 29th, 2023, and then you go in and you subtract 1,000 days, that's going to take you to 1,000 days. Or actually, I'll make the math even easier. If you do a formula that basically just says today's date, June 29th, 2023 minus 365, it's going to come up as June 29th, 2022.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an easy way. So if you get that, if you take a formula for 1 billion seconds and you convert that into days, you can do you can run the formula right there and it'll pop up as sometime in 1992. I can't remember the month, but So I haven't done this calculation in a bit, but like I said, that is accurate. So yeah, a billion seconds is roughly 31 years versus 11 days for a million seconds. So that there you have it for seconds. Think about that in dollars.
Oh, you all right? You just blew my mind with the calculations earlier, and I want to know just how bored were you when you did those?
Actually, no, what happened was I read this somewhere and I said that doesn't sound right. And I happen to have it's not Microsoft Excel, but it's one of the other database programs like that. I think it may have been Google's iteration of it.
Okay.
So I sat down and I ran the two calculations, played with the formats, cleaned them up a little bit, and I was like, I think I actually ran it 3 times because I was like, that doesn't make sense. Let me run that again to see if I didn't screw anything up. And lo and behold, and then I looked it up and I was like, yep, this is accurate. So
You should have been a scientist. You didn't accept the first results. You're like, no, I must see this again. So you ran further experiments and found your solution at the end.
well, it was just the same old thing previously as we were talking about. I was like, cannot really be the difference because if think of it this way too, and this is something else I thought in my mind. If you had $1 billion, you can go buy a super fancy, beautiful fucking condo in New York City in Midtown Manhattan for about 50 million bucks. And then you can go do the exact same thing in Los Angeles and buy another really nice condo somewhere. Actually, skip that. You can go buy a really nice house in the Hollywood Hills outside Los Angeles for $50 million. And you want to know what? If you take those and add them together, that's only 10% of a billion. 100 million is 10% of a billion.
That's yeah.
And that's why I say, if you're Jeff Bezos and you have billions upon billions of dollars, or if you're the Koch family who, if you really want to give yourself nightmares, look up the fucking Koch family,
No.
Koch. Yeah, they've been a hobby horse of mine for about 5.5 years now. But if you look at that, and I think last time I read, the family was estimated to be worth 60 or 70 billion dollars, or the Walton family, who own Walmart.
Yeah.
You look these people up and you just say, how fucked up are you? You have this much money, but you need more? What the hell is wrong with you? Like at that point, you have a sickness. You are not well. You have an illness. There is something literally wrong with you, in my opinion. Because I honestly can tell you this, like I would go out and I'd probably maybe buy 2 houses, maybe buy another car. Well, no, I get like a nice sedan and I go get a truck just for shits and giggles. Um, I buy some nice furniture and some stuff like that. I give my father some money. I give some friends of mine some money. But really, at the end of the day, I'm going to have money that I don't even know what the hell to do with. Like to the point where and the funny thing is too, and I kind of learned this surreptitiously from asking around and checking a few things. If you go to like most banks, if you go in there and you put in like $20,000 or $30,000 into a savings account, you're going to get what, like maybe 0.5% on that. Like you're going to get 0.5% interest a month or something like that, right?
Yeah.
If you go into a bank with some serious cash, like north of like $500,000 or $600,000, you can negotiate a much higher interest rate from them.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense. They always say, money talks. So if you're in that
Absolutely.
position, yeah, you can definitely. Wow. Okay.
So I mean, if you get down to brass tacks like that, so even if you have like these obscene amounts of money, you can, go to a bank, and if you can get like 5 to 10% on any of this stuff, you never have to work because you've got so much interest coming in. But still, these people feel this need to, they have to find every tax loophole they can to squeeze more money on that front. They have to negotiate giant compensation packages for themselves. They have to squeeze people. They have to squeeze like the fucking rank and file workers at their companies who are actually the backbone of the entire place and put them even further like behind the 8 ball. The income equality is going to be the issue. I think that ultimately is one of the major seeds that is going to crack the foundation of this country.
I would have to agree. Yeah, because the disparity is just, it's too wide and it's too mind-boggling in certain cases. As far as, like you said, for the working class that are the backbone of a lot of these companies, to pay them as little as they do get paid, and then for people to, tout the bonuses or how much, they take home or whatever property they own, whatever cars they have, however they dress, whatever the case is, like all that stuff. It shows you how much they make, and it's not nice. It's not good for the country overall.
Nope, not at all.
So,
And this is the kind of thing, and this is why people, people talk about it's like America isn't the country it used to be. And I was like, well, sure as shit ain't the workers' fucking fault.
that's very true.
But enough of my political hobby horse, and I'm going to get off of that.
Fair enough. I look, again, I say we don't really get into it that often, but sometimes it does rear its head, and we have to talk about it now and then because it is affecting us in certain respects. So
true.
But I'm not as well versed as you, or like let's say when Jimmy was on the show, you guys can definitely detail a lot more of the stuff than I can. I try to glean whatever I can from the stories that I do read, and then just try not to get lost too much in the weeds as far as all the other stuff, because it's very time consuming and kind of like going down a YouTube rabbit hole. I mean, politics is the same thing. If you go far down and you start engaging with a lot of the different topics and discussions, you can get lost in a lot of the stuff, which then will make you one of these people who just wants to be the loud minority, and then you just become a nut job at that point, or at least you look like one when you start spouting off at the top of your lungs. But
Well, honestly, when you get down to that level, I honestly look at it as you're either one of two people. You're either a grifter, and you don't really believe a lot of this stuff, and you're doing it because this is how you make your money. So you say the outrageous stuff, you tell people what they want to hear, so you can get the clicks, you can get the fucking, you can get the hits on your website, you can get the sponsorships. If you have a Patreon or something like that, that you can turn into monetization with that, or a subscription service, which, there's a lot of right-wing news sites that are like pay to play,
yes,
or pay to view. And that's how they know they can suck people in. So it makes you wonder, it's like, how much of this do they really believe, and how much of this are they just cocking off with because they're playing the game? Or in the case of a lot of these, people don't realize there's some serious money behind some of the right-wing news sites.
Yeah.
And just like,
if you
but on the
follow
other
the
side,
money,
you're either that. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I don't mean to cut you off, but you're right. If you follow the money and you see where a lot of the stuff is coming from, and somebody who's backing some of these news sites, then you start to form a picture of what's really going on, and it's not pretty sometimes. Because something that you might be listening to and enjoy, you might agree with some of the different points that they're making. When you find out who's backing them, you might find that you completely disagree with who's backing them. But at that point, it's like you're caught. Do you continue listening to the show that you enjoy, you agree with, or do you continue supporting the people who are backing the show, and they might have completely different viewpoints than you?
Yep.
So yeah, you definitely have to figure out what you want to do. I don't know. That's again a whole other discussion to figure out what you're listening to, what you're watching, what you're supporting. Because if you have a better understanding where it's coming from, then you have a better chance of forming an informed opinion on what you want to do, whether you want to continue supporting them, or if you want to find another outlet or another source for your entertainment, for your news, whatever, what have you. If you can make those informed decisions, and let's face it, nobody's perfect. Sometimes you will get caught in a situation where you might feel hypocritical, but try to use your best judgment to figure out what you want to do. And again, we're going to say it one more time. Don't yuck somebody else's yum. Just because somebody else likes Fox News, I mean, it's shitty sometimes the opinions that come off of there. Likewise with CNN. But unless somebody's getting hurt, hey, listen to what you're going to listen to. News, music, stories, whatever the case is. Make informed decisions, and hopefully you can have a civil conversation with somebody that you disagree with, and it doesn't have to come down to a shouting match.
Well, the problem is some people, it's not about having a civil conversation. Unfortunately, a lot of people have already made up their minds.
Yes, well, that's in the politics, that's another problem.
Well, and also I will say, don't yuck their yum. That's great for entertainment and pop culture. Well, maybe in politics we should be yucking some yums.
There are situations that, yes, it does it necessitate a little bit of a pushback or debate. Absolutely. But not every single topic is something that you should launch off and attack somebody just because they're on the other side of the aisle.
Yeah, but also at certain points, there's other issues where it's not just, well, we're going to agree to disagree on this.
The passive aggressive approach.
No, I mean in the regard of, hey, if you have, and I'll go back to kind of playing off what we said. Hey, maybe we might have a disagreement on alternative minimum tax, or maybe we're going to have a disagreement on trade agreements, or we're going to have a disagreement on NAFTA or GATT or anything of that nature. But if the debate is something more serious, yeah, there's really only right and wrong on that one.
Yeah.
I know if the debate is whether or not, well, should trans people be allowed to live or not?
Well, again, that's for you and I think we agree on that one. There's a right and wrong there. There's, don't be a dick in the sense of, hey, look, these people just want to live and enjoy life, the pursuit of happiness, life and liberty and all that nonsense. But there's people on the other side that believe that, hey, no, you're an abomination. You shouldn't be allowed to exist on the same plane that I do. And that's bullshit.
Exactly. Yeah. That's why I said there's some things that we can agree to disagree on and we can debate on. There's some other issues that, no, there's really the right and wrong on. So, yeah.
Again, you mentioned before, 2024 is going to be interesting, and I'm not looking forward to it. So,
no, and it's really sad. I'm sure you've heard that old saying, "May you live in interesting times."
Yes.
I think we can. I think we're due for a couple of boring years.
I would like that, but again, I get the feeling that after those few boring years, then what my son has in store for him, or both my kids, then that's going to be a hell of a lifetime they're going to have to go through. So we'll see what happens. But let me switch gears over to something a little bit less divisive. How's that?
Okay.
And again, not like you and I are, because you and I share a lot of the same different views and values, which is nice. Again, we do disagree on a few other things, but hey, whatever the case is, that's never really caused a debate or argument for us. More like pop culture stuff you and I go back and forth on, depending what it is. But here's one for you, and I'd like to get your opinion on this.
What you got?
So we talked about The Flash last time, and The Flash for Warner Brothers Discovery should be the end of the DCEU, as it was called originally, the DC Extended Universe. Now going forward, it will be referred to as the DCU. So kind of like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now you're going to have, I guess, the DC Comics Universe, or DC Cinematic Universe.
So it's the DCCU?
That's what I first thought when I heard that. I'm guessing the D is the D and the C, and then the C is just cinematic. It's a very bad acronym when you try to think it out. But
yeah, they could use a little workshopping, I think.
James Gunn has already mentioned that when him and his partner Peter Safran, once they take over, and now it's going to be called the DCU, he has confirmed that the first character of the DCU will be Blue Beetle, which is going to be coming out in, I believe, later in August, I want to say, or if not July. That'll be the first character. The first official movie will be Superman Legacy, which James Gunn himself has written and going to direct. And with that news, they've also said they finally cast their brand new Superman and Lois Lane. Have you heard about this?
No.
A few people tested, but they finally settled down with David Corenswet, Corenswet. I can't imagine going through life with that name, but whatever. We're going to move along.
Okay. All right.
And Rachel Brosnahan.
Okay.
To me, these are relative unknown actors because I have not seen them in anything bigger. Apparently, they have been working for a little bit themselves. They have had other people test, and as far as test in couples. So not only do they have them test as Clark and Lois, but they also had them test as Superman and Lois to get a better understanding of how the chemistry might work on screen. And apparently, these two, Mr. Corenswet and Brosnahan, they now have won the titles of Superman and Lois Lane. And they wanted to get this done. I should also add this in. Before June 30th at midnight, apparently, where the Screen Actors Guild strike may or may not take place depending on negotiations. So they wanted to make sure that at the very least was signed and set before the strike is kicked off, if it does. Because if they have to delay, they delay, but at the very least they're locked in, and when things resume, they can pick back up where they left off in production.
Gotcha. Okay.
How do you feel having a new Superman? Because we heard the story about Henry Cavill at one point coming back. This was back when The Rock was trying to reshape the DCEU to his liking, and kept saying that, oh, Henry Cavill's coming back. We're going to have Black Adam versus Superman. He was trying to hotshot past Shazam, story-wise, and it all fell apart because we had Henry Cavill come back. I know you probably didn't watch Black Adam, but at the end of Black Adam, spoilers, there's a cameo by Henry Cavill, Superman.
Okay, so I kind of had a feeling this was going to happen. Just because when the news, good Lord, I can't even remember when the news came out that James Gunn was leaving Marvel behind and just he was going to be calling the shots for DC, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when he did that, I kind of had a feeling that he was going to do something of that nature, just to basically say, hey, everything's kind of turned into a mess. We've already done multiple, there's multiple dimensions or however they are explaining it on their side of things. So, yeah, let's try to start clean because, trying to clean up the 7-8 years of mess he's walking into, I don't know if that's doable, even for a guy who seems to be pretty good at what he's doing. So,
yeah, James Gunn is a great director. He's a great storyteller. Depending on where he works, at Marvel, I think he did really well because he had Kevin Feige and other people as far as like saying yes or no to whatever his story elements were. For the most part, they let him run whatever he wanted to do. But when he did the Suicide Squad for DC or Warner Brothers Discovery, he pushed the envelope a little bit more, probably because they gave him some more leeway. And I didn't like his version of the Suicide Squad as much as I hoped I would.
It's interesting because I think the two of us are the outliers on that one because everyone else I know loved his version of the Suicide Squad. And
okay.
Yeah, and honestly, I remember when I think that came out 2 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the James Gunn Suicide Squad. It took me like 3 sittings before I finally got through it because I kept bouncing between. Man, for a first time watch of a movie, I was like, I just kept. Before I knew it, I'm like playing on my phone because I'm just like, I just don't give a shit about this. There was one really great scene, but the rest of it I was very kind of lukewarm on.
Okay, which scene was that?
When they go to the one village and I can't remember Idris Elba's character's name.
I believe it was Bloodsport.
Bloodsport and Peacemaker.
Oh,
they were kind of having like the dick waving contest about who could murder somebody in like of the different ways they can murder people.
Yes.
And then at the end, like one of them, like they both kind of like flip each other off and do like the jack off motion. And then even funnier, like the one guy they killed, they totally see his dong. I'm a sucker for dumb shit like that. Like, hey, the guy who's hanging dong just got shot in the head. That's pretty funny. And then they both walk into the tent and they're talking to the one leader and they'd be like, "Oh, all these people are on your side. I wonder where all the guards are." And they just kind of like look at each other like, "Oh shit." Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that was pretty. That had me laughing pretty hard. But the rest of the movie, I was very whatever towards.
James Gunn took C and D list characters in Marvel and Guardians and somehow made them major players,
mm-hmm.
which is something that was not, and nobody was expecting. When you said Guardians of the Galaxy on the Marvel side, people are like, "Oh God, they've been having a string of great hits. I guess this is the one that's gonna just bomb really hard," and it was the opposite of that. And then for Suicide Squad, again, he took a bunch of unknown characters, and you could throw them into this vehicle called Suicide Squad, and have them be up on the big screen for the first time. And a lot of those characters you're not going to see again, regardless, like story-wise. But I don't know. I maybe because the filters were not as... I guess I shouldn't say filters, but maybe they didn't flag a few things here and there as far as pushing the envelope with some of the stuff. Maybe that's why I didn't like it. Like, it was just gory for no reason.
Okay.
For shock value, I guess you can say. And don't get me wrong, I like shock value if it's done right. But in this case, for a superhero genre, it just didn't feel like it had the place. It wasn't placed correctly in this situation, I should say. If you watch Peacemaker, and even though I don't like John Cena, I watch Peacemaker because I'm a comic book fan. That had certain elements of gore, but that felt better. That was more fun and more entertaining. So I could, and it's funny because at one point I was saying, "Fuck, I don't like him, but he did a fucking great job." And I was annoyed when I heard, "Oh, season 2? God damn it!" But if they can continue that type of storytelling, so long as they can be entertaining, I'll watch it. But
Yeah.
for his Suicide Squad version, I was just like, eh. I think it was overhyped. It was his, like at the time, I'm sure it was like his little hurrah because he was let go from Marvel and Disney because of the whole Twitter nonsense that happened with Michael Cernovich.
Yeah.
And
That scumbag.
they needed to pretty much make an example at the time and just cut ties for a little bit. And they didn't want to, but they're like, look, optics don't look really good on this. Let's let him go. DC obviously scoops him up, takes him in. And then from there, he does his movie, goes back to finish Guardians because all the actors over there said they would not do Guardians 3 without him. But at that point, they approached him and they approached his partner, Peter Safran, and say, would you like to run DC? We're looking for a new head and we want to, try to shift gears. And so long as they can be on the same page, they said, they both said, no, yeah, no problem. So they took it on, and I'm kind of curious how it's going to go. And the one thing that James Gunn has been finding out is that he can't answer every tweet or every comment because he's been trying to be open about everything. But he's also been realizing that a lot of people are just putting up misinformation to try to goad him into saying yes or no as far as debunking things. So it's gotten to the point where he's like, all right, look, I'm being accessible a little too much. I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to focus on things, and we're going to get things done. One of which is the casting for Superman and Lois Lane, which is great. Hopefully we'll find out more information. Lex Luthor is rumored to be in this one. Whether or not that's true, we have to wait and see. Members of the group called the Authority may make appearances as well, so maybe some more casting news will be brought to that one. But overall, I'm kind of happy in a sense that we're going to have new actors portraying, because if they do want to have a new starting point for the DCU, that's important. Even though I think Jason Momoa may reprise, if not Aquaman, he might be another character in the DCU.
Okay.
So I don't know how that's going to work out. But if you have remnants of the old universe, the old cinematic universe, it might hurt things going forward. And the other thing is, which is kind of weird, the announcement of James Gunn and Safran taking over DC also pretty much kills any real investment people could have in the current movies that were coming out. More specifically, Black Adam, Shazam! Fury of the Gods, The Flash, and it may or may not hurt Blue Beetle. We have to wait and see. But because we know there's going to be a new iteration of the DC universe, then the old movies really don't mean anything. There's no stakes for them. There's no real, jeopardy for any of the characters because it doesn't matter. We're going to have new versions of them coming up real soon. So maybe that's why some of the recent movies for DC have been suffering, in addition to other reasons, but it just might be compounded because of that. Who knows?
But at a certain point, also, you have to cut your losses.
Exactly.
I mean, the DC universe was not good, at least in my opinion. I was pretty unimpressed with it. And there were a few shining spots. Like the first Wonder Woman, I thought was pretty fucking tight.
Funny enough, yeah, Wonder Woman and Aquaman were like two of the bigger films from that version of the universe.
I never actually bothered watching Aquaman. Suicide or Justice League. I watched both cuts. Both cuts put me to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Dawn of Justice put me to sleep. Man of Steel was decent, but God, that was already 10 years ago. So you want to know what? Maybe at a certain point, you just got to say, okay, scrap everything. We're going to start fresh, and we're going to see. We have. If you think about it, I mean, they have one of the most recognizable characters in the world in Superman. But they just could not. I don't know what they were doing wrong. I don't know what recipe that Kevin Feige and Marvel came up with that worked, but DC just couldn't quite figure out how to put two and two together. But hopefully, I'm hoping, and as I've said before, I've kind of fallen off on Marvel. I'm not as interested in it as I used to be. It's still some fine stuff, but for the most part, like if I'm if something new from Marvel comes out, I'm significantly less interested in watching that, and I'm probably just going to say it's like, yeah, I think I'm going to go watch Captain America: Winter Soldier again, or I'm going to go watch, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 again, or something like that.
Yeah.
So let's see if DC can actually get a shot at shinings here.
Yeah, it would be nice to see, especially since, as you were saying before, with Superman, it's such a hard character to write because there have been so many stories and so many iterations of it. How do you really portray this God among men?
Hmm.
So it's going to take a certain perspective, a certain type of storyteller, and who knows, maybe James Gunn might be that type. But it remains to be seen. At the very least, we'll find out what happens if and when this actor strike takes place, and how development of the film itself goes, and hopefully the first phase of the new DCU, Gods and Monsters. That's the theme of it at the very least. We'll get a better understanding of what James Gunn is going to shoot for, along with his partner, Peter Safran. So, all right. Well, sir, I think we've had a long and
Yeah, I think we covered a lot of ground today.
yeah, I was hoping to make this one a little bit shorter. I was going to go for bite-sized stuff to try to pepper in here and there. But no, we we hit the same mark from last time.
Yeah.
All right, we'll work on that. We'll see what happens. Well, if you made it this far, thank you for listening. My name is Eric.
Oh, I'm done. Sorry.
Thank you for listening. We are the Rabblecast.